So we're going to continue Tehilim. We're holding chapter Kuf Daled, 104. This particular chapter, I believe, to be a very significant chapter in strengthening one's faith, even though it is brought down that the segula for this chapter, for some reason, is to kill a demon. Narog mazik. Somebody is being haunted by demons. One who has certain fears because of where he is. This chapter could be a source of protection. So I'm not discounting that possibility, that segula for this chapter, but I always look at this chapter as perhaps the most powerful chapter in relation to meditating about creation and coming to appreciate what Hashem has made for us, what He has prepared for us in this world. So this chapter definitely, if one were to study it in depth, can go a long way in opening up our eyes to many things that people just are not paying attention. We're distracted because, we have our bills to pay, our lives to live. Everyone, whatever they need to do, their jobs, their profession, our families. So that takes away a little bit of the focus that we should be having on creation. So chapter 104 is a chapter, I think, like none other. There are other chapters in Tehilim that also touch on this topic, but this is the one that's the most concentrated on describing a great deal of creation in detail. And that's why it's important to pay attention to the words, to study it. And if I had the time, I would put together a video. I still may do it one day, if I have the time, because this would fit very, very well with this chapter. What kind of a video? What we're talking about here are many parts, many aspects of nature that in the past most of humanity was totally unaware of, except for the very knowledgeable men and scientists. Today, science is accessible. There's a lot of resources, whether in books, in the internet, and the like, and it is audio-visual. You can get a lot of information, a treasure trove of information on different parts of the scientific world, whether it's medicine or technology, physics and biology, and it's fascinating. It really is fascinating, the vast amount of information that exists today, the large database of information about the lives of animals, plants. But I think what is sometimes missed is the unique ecosystems that exists in this world, where there's so much obvious interdependency between organisms, creatures, birds, animals. Like they have their own community, in how they all need each other, in how Hashem has prepared the dinner table, let's say it that way. He has set the cast. He has prepared everything for everyone to enjoy. So everything is done perfectly. And if you read Parashat Bereshit, you will see that Hashem says, after everything He created, this is good. What does that mean? That this serves a purpose. It is complete. It is something that I want. Otherwise, why should He say good? Good is something relative. But when Hashem says something is good about His creation, it means even bugs, spiders. Women tend to run away when they see one, right? But there's a need for them. And the more we learn about creation from the Pesukim, from the Talmud, from the Midrashim, the more we see that everything was done b'chokhmah, with tremendous wisdom. And it's not just the creation itself or the creatures themselves, which in itself shows tremendous chokhmah. I'm talking about the interdependency, how they all need each other, how they all coexist. And there's so much that we can talk about. We don't have the time within an hour to go too much into depth. But this chapter does shed some light about that. And when we have the time, we'll elaborate, because you can translate the pasuk and just go on. But if you really look and analyze every single pasuk. And by the way, we'll only do half the chapters tonight, maybe just half. You will see what I mean, how there's a depth of information, a wealth of information in every single pasuk. And a lot of people who have learned this chapter have not really fully understood what he's communicating, because it sometimes appears simple, sometimes it appears very puzzling, and that's why I did some work, to try to figure out exactly what are alternative interpretations other than what the commentaries bring. Could there be alternative interpretations that are compatible, of course, with what we know in science and what we know in the Torah, that fit into the verse, and you will be amazed at what we found. So this chapter, Kuf Dalet, is amazing in how it describes the creation of the world, and that's why it's an important chapter to know well. Barechi nafshit Adonai Adonai Elohai gadalta meod hod ve'adar lavashta. So the translation is that let my soul, nafshi, bless Hashem, Hashem Elohai, my God, gadalta meod, you are greatly exalted. All right, I think everybody agrees with that. Hod ve'adar lavashta, you have garbed yourself with majesty and splendor. How does he know that? Where does he see that? So he's observing creation. He's looking at the night sky, perhaps. And today, it's not just the night sky. You have very powerful telescopes that you can have a close-up and see what's going on in the moon, somewhat. You can see the rings of Saturn. You can see some of the atmosphere on Jupiter. And if you don't have a telescope, but you have what do they call those, orbiters, I guess, that are going around in space that get a close-up, they transmit information in greater detail, then you see, wow, look at all that. So we're able to see a lot closer, just that David HaMelech has the advantage that he was divinely inspired. So he had a lot of this information. He knew, possibly, of course, a lot more of why Hashem created those things than we do. So here, he is sharing with us how this is something to be amazed at, something to admire. But he says, he reminds us, Hashem Elokai gadalta meod, you're much greater than what we can fathom. So no matter what we say, no matter what we observe, it's all so little compared to what you really are. But the more we see how great you are. So this observation will help in realizing, wow, how small we are, how great Hashem is. But hod ve'hadar lavashta, you garb yourself with majesty and splendor. What does that mean? Where's the majesty? So he's talking about the reign of Hashem in this world. Malchut Hashem, the reign of Hashem, is revealed. When you look at creation up close, as much as we can, you will notice this majesty of Hashem. Now, my interpretation is that majesty can be seen in the tremendous amount of stars and galaxies. Because as the rabbis describe, these stars and galaxies are servants of Hashem. The Kabbalah gets into it a little bit more. And if so, what are they for? So I have a whole lecture on what is the purpose of the stars and galaxies. But they are servants of Hashem. And who has billions of servants? The greatest king of all. So that is a form that Hashem garbs himself, dresses himself, with majesty and splendor. Besides the fact that it's so beautiful. And that could also be what he's describing. It's majestic. If you look at some of the pictures of the galaxies, it's incredible. Beautiful things. So this is definitely majestic. But all of this, even though it's a praise to Hashem, is very, very little compared to what is out there. Nonetheless, we have to be mitbonen. We have to look at it as much as we can. Now, you will notice from this pasuk, and if you have a Tehilim, the next few pasukim, he will be using a term that is related to a garment, covering, like he used over here, lavashta, you have garbed yourself. Hashem doesn't garb himself. So when he uses the word lavashta, or the next word in the next pasuk, oteh, which also means to wrap up, he's also alluding to another important detail, and that is that this is Hashem's way of revealing a little bit of himself, because he cannot be observed. In other words, he's mechuseh, he's really concealed. You can't see Hashem, but you can see a little bit of what he has made. You can see a little bit of his majesty, of his greatness. So he's garbed with all of this. Means, here, this is what you can see in this world with your physical eyes. The garb, the levush hachitzoni, the outer garment of Hashem, but not the essence of Hashem. That cannot be observed. You enwrap yourself with light as with the garment. So you see, oteh, wrap himself with light as with the garment. Noteh shamayim kayiriyah, and you spread the heavens as a curtain. It's very possible, if you follow the order of the Pesukim, on the one hand, he's describing creation from the very beginning, and as you will see, he does follow a certain order of what came first. But even if he's not talking necessarily about how creation came to be, he's telling us to look at the various details that were created in the very beginning, because they contain valuable information. In other words, we shouldn't take things just for granted. If we analyze them, we will see how much chokhmah they have, how much wisdom, how this could not have happened by itself, how there must be a creator who designed all of this. So he's picking on certain things for good reason, because they're very, very significant, not only for mankind, but because of what they represent. Especially today that we have more scientific knowledge than generations before, we're able to appreciate this a lot more. So for example, in Pasuk Bet, he's talking about light. So you wrap yourself with light as with a garment. Okay? I assure you that the majority of people who are going to read it, who are going to study it, are going to say, okay, light is important, light is everywhere. Of course, light is very, very fast. You're familiar with the speed of light. But why does it say oteh or kasalma? He wraps himself with light as with a garment. So that's what we're doing here. We're analyzing, we're not just translating the pasuk. What is he trying to communicate to us? So light, yes, one of the first creations. If we're following the order of creation, yes, it's one of the first ones. Light is very important. Where is that source of light? There's a big light bulb in space called the sun. Is he talking about that? Well, most likely. There's also the organus that we've spoken about, the Kabbalah, the concealed light, a more spiritual light. All right. There's a lot of things that are compared to light. But here he's enwrapping himself with this light, like a garment. So I would like to suggest that there's scientific information here as well. The fact that he's describing the light a little bit, that it's being worn as a garment, perhaps, or again only perhaps, this is just an idea, because we have so much more information today in science than before, that we can understand it or relate to this in a different way. There's a big discussion among physicists whether light is a wave, particles, both, neither, because it appears to act as waves, light waves, but sometimes it does behave like particles. So it's very, very strange, it's very unique, and this has been proven. And besides that, we know there's different wavelengths in light, where you can split that white light and receive many colors, depending on the wavelength. That's what you see in a rainbow. It's the same thing, it's the same source, light, but how come I'm seeing different colors? So here we're seeing, wow, this light has much more substance than what the eye can see, because We can't see everything. There's some radiation, which light is a form of radiation, that we cannot see. You know that there's microwaves and there's X-rays. You can't see those things, but they exist. I mean, if you have a microwave oven, you know it exists. It works. How does it work? So there's a lot of waves or energy, radiation, that we cannot see, but it's all related to this light. Okay, so here Hashem is enwrapping himself with this light, kasalma, like a garment. What does a garment do? It covers up. It has perhaps layers within it. So, again, that's my way of looking at it. He's describing to us that this light is not a simple creation, that Hashem uses this light to envelop creation in more than one way, like a garment. But the moment he says a garment, he's also Kabbalistically referring to tzimtzum, that the light of Hashem is being diminished in this physical earth in order for us to experience Him. In order for us physical beings to experience Hashem in this world, that light that created the world had to be diminished, had to be constricted. So the salma, the garment, is also alluding to that. There's a cover, there's a concealment to that, to the source of the light, I guess. So what's that? He spread the heavens as a curtain. So we're talking about the atmosphere. It's like a curtain, shamayim. Why is that important? Well, if you analyze in greater detail what the atmosphere is, the various gases, the balance of the gases, just the right amount of oxygen, just the right amount of nitrogen, hydrogen, just the right amount. It wouldn't be a safe place to live if the balance of the gases was not right. And if you want proof of that, just go up the mountains, the very, very tall mountains. You're going to have a hard time breathing because there's less oxygen. The same thing, of course, under the water. That's more obvious to most people. But it's not so obvious unless you feel a lack of the oxygen. You have to go up the mountain. There's some people that get used to living in these tall mountains. But for us, if we were to go there, and go there very quickly, we would feel the difference, and it could be dangerous. So there's a shamayim, kayiriyah, like a curtain that protects this world. It acts as a protector from ultraviolet rays. It acts as a protector in many, many ways that perhaps science has not even discovered yet. And it provides the heat and the various gases that we need down here below. It doesn't escape. So in this pasuk, you're not only seeing the very first things that were created, you're also seeing the more obvious ones, because light is obvious, it's revealed. Shamayim is something that we all see. So he begins with that for good reason. Next. המקרב המים עליותיו השם אבים רכובו המהלך על כנפי רוח. He roofs his heavens with water. He makes the clouds his chariot. He moves them on the wings of the wind. This is a pasuk that people may be able to figure out what the words mean, but what exactly is he trying to say? Because the description of rain here, which is what this is all about, is that this rain is coming down from the heavens. How? Through clouds. And these clouds are his chariot. But it's not just about clouds. He moves them on the wings of the wind. But when you pay closer attention to it, and if anybody had any academic background, you will realize, oh, he's describing precisely the way the cycle of rain functions. It's a whole cycle on how the water comes from the ocean, rises, formation of clouds, and the wind brings it over to the land. does it miss? It knows where to drop that rain. I mean, a lot of that rain drops in the oceans too. But that rain is clean water before it may not have been. So there's filtration going on in the clouds too. Here we're thinking, okay, the clouds are just, the humidity, the moisture rising, the winds. Yes, they're all working together. So look at the system. This is a system of rain, cloud, wind working together in conjunction to provide sustenance, to provide life for this planet. So he's pointing this out to us. Who made these laws? Who made this work? How did this all begin? Hashem. We're talking about him after all. Ha-Mekareh, he's the one that does it. This is important because many people may think, oh no, this is just nature, it's Mother Nature. Yeah, but who made the Mother Nature? Fine, Mother Nature, but who made Mother Nature? Who put it in place to begin with? Hashem. He roofs his heavens with water. In other words, he comes down from above to be able to reach large areas. Yes, and the clouds act like chariots, drawing that water, carrying that tremendous amounts of water. You know how much water is carried by the clouds? They're like chariots. And who drives them? The winds. Pasuk Dalet. He makes the winds his messengers, the blazing fire his servants. Another pasuk here that is so brief and very little is discussed about it. What does that mean? Well, the simple meaning is that yes, the ruchot, the winds, are messengers of Hashem. Hashem has many messengers, the rabbis tell us, in this world to carry out his will. And the winds are his messengers. But what about Esh Lohet? What about the fire, the blazing fire, his servants? Which blazing fire are we talking about? Fire usually is destructive. Yes, some winds and some fire can be destructive. So this is Minashamayim. Unless man started it, you can have lightning producing a fire, which is Mishamayim, from heaven. You can have destructive winds, tornadoes, some very, very powerful ones. They can be very destructive. They are his messengers. The winds are necessary, good winds, good messengers, but sometimes you have destructive ones too. So whether it's a fire or a wind, they are messengers of Hashem. Or another interpretation is that the malachim, you have angels who are messengers of Hashem, can be from wind or from fire. Another interpretation of what could be meant in this pasuk, that he's actually talking about his real malachim, which happen to also be his messengers. So even though what we've seen so far is order in a system that is perfect, we're seeing also the potential for Hashem interfering with it, stopping it, breaking his own rules. So that is why you have the possibility of too much rain or lack of rain. And they're going to blame who? Global warming. Instead of saying, wait a minute, maybe we need to pray to him, maybe we need to ask forgiveness. We've been having this drought for so many years. People are going to forget because now there's no more drought. Right? When there was no rain, people were concerned. Right? So we are taught, we're actually taught as children that if there's not enough rain, it's not a good sign. We have to go out to the fields or to the synagogues. Today we have synagogues to pray to Hashem that he should bring the rain. Without rain we cannot survive. And that's what our forefathers did. The rules are being broken sometimes. We have to realize why they're being broken. Not global warming or El Niño and La Niña. These are normal phenomena. In a way, they're normal, natural phenomena that do occur from time to time. But the question is, why? And it's not necessarily man-made. I'm not saying that everything is not man-made. Some things could be man-made, of course. But things that are very, very extreme are from Shamayim. Whether it's a tornado, there's different scales of tornado. The highest scale of a tornado, which is extremely catastrophic, is E5. You don't want to be around that one. Destroys homes and throws everything around. Very little is left in its path. And tornadoes are very, very funny. Some of them make U-turns. Yeah, there's incredible stories about tornadoes. So we're talking about nature, of course, but Hashem put rules in nature. And He wishes to preserve the world. He wants us to take care of this place. He wants us to learn from Him. Look, I've made law and order. Look at the harmony and the beauty of what I've made. And learn from this. This is the way I want you to be. So there's a lot of valuable lessons to learn by looking at creation. It's not just to strengthen our faith and to see, wow, look at the boss. Look what He created. Yes, it's intended for that too, but it's intended for us to learn from Hashem. This is the way Hashem is. Hashem takes care of His creatures. We should take care of each other. He wants us to be like Him. A lot to learn from this. Yasad eretz al mechoneha bal timot olam va'ed. Pasuk Hey. He established the earth on its foundations that it shall never falter. Even though mechonea is not the regular word used for foundations, but that's more or less what it means over here. That there are certain foundations. But why use mechonea? That's not the regular word. There must be a reason why David HaMelech here is describing the foundation of the earth al mechonea. Anybody that knows good Hebrew knows that mechonea is mechona, something that is a machine, something that has wheels perhaps, something that is moving around. What kind of a foundation is that? I have some news to tell you. The reason why he uses perhaps this word over here, even though it does mean foundation, it's a different kind of foundation. It's called axis. The earth rotates every 24 hours on its axis, never misses. Besides that rotation on its axis, it also has an orbit once a year around the sun. Besides the axis and the orbit, it also has a tilt, which is what produces the seasons. What's all that about by itself? It has to work perfectly. And the earth is at an exact distance from the sun, on average approximately 93 million miles from the sun. You want to get a little bit closer? Not recommended. You burn up. You get a little bit too far, you freeze. You don't have to go too far to freeze. You can go to the North Pole or to the South Pole. So everything is being controlled just perfectly. So we're talking about that kind of a foundation. He established the earth on this foundation, which is unshakable. It does not change. It stays the same for all these years. Something to admire. Pasuk Vav. Pasuk Vav, I'm already letting you know, I don't believe that you'll ever find a satisfactory explanation for it. If you ever do, let me know. So I'm going to have to give you mine. Pasuk Vav says as follows: Tehom kalevush kisito, al harim yamdu mayim. Hashem covered the depth as a garment. All right, that's what the words mean. Al harim yamdu mayim. The water stood above the mountains. All right, so let's first look at the word tehom. What's tehom? The depth. So some commentaries say it's talking about the waters, the oceans. They are also called the depths. Why? Because at some point they covered the entire world before the Yabeshet, before the Yabasha, before the earth, before the continent came up to the surface. Everything was covered by water. So there is an association between the word Tehom meaning the deep waters. So Hashem covers the deep waters or the depths like a garment. Fine, we've seen the word garment before. This is another kind of garment. It could also be, however, that Tehom is talking about the real Tehom, the depth of this planet, which has various layers. And it contains oil and gases and water. And that's being covered, perhaps, with a garment too. Or either one is fine. Hashem covers up the depth like he would with a garment. But what is Al Harim Yamdu Maim? Do the waters stand on top of the mountains? Take a moment perhaps to think about this. What does this mean? The waters stood above the mountains. Now, I'll tell you what the simple meaning is. The simple meaning is very likely, since it follows the Tehom, that it's talking about in the very beginning of creation. In the beginning of the creation, yes, the waters covered even the mountains. Or, during the Mabul, they for sure covered the mountains. That I understand. Okay, that makes sense. If that's the interpretation, we're okay. But he's saying a little bit differently. He's saying, Al Harim Yamdu Maim. The waters stood. It doesn't say they covered, they stood. Lefi Aniyudati, my humble opinion, I really think that there's a chance that here he's revealing to us glaciers. You know how many feet of ice are above the mountains? Entire lands, Antarctica, layers above layers above layers of ice. Without getting into how did it happen, how long it took to happen, how did it form, there's all kinds of opinions about that. But the fact is that they are there now. And there's lots of water contained in that ice sheet that if it were to melt, the level of the oceans would rise and would flood many cities. But obviously there's a need for that. We need that extra fresh water someday. So Hashem prepared it. Greenland, full of ice, covered with ice. Tremendous, deep layers of ice. So it could be that this is another interpretation that he's at least hinting to in the words Al Harim Yandu Maim, that the water stood above the mountains. Pasuk Zayin, Min garat chayinusu min kol ramchai chafezun. Pasuk Zayin 7. At your exhortation, gara is a shout, to exhort. They fled. Min kol ramchai chafezun, at the sound of your thunder they rushed away. Well, it could be talking about the very beginning creation when Hashem said, let the waters move away so that we can see the Yabashah, the earth. So Hashem says so. Hashem made a statement. That is his gara, that is his kol that he's talking about over here. Through the sound of your thunder. But it's also talking about how Hashem put limits to the seas. This is where you stop. You cover a lot of ground, but you don't go beyond this point. Otherwise they would flood the land. So they move away. So this too doesn't happen by itself. It happens by Shemayim. It's a rule. Yes, it's a rule that is in place. And when this rule is broken, what happens? You have a tsunami. But in the meantime, Min garatcha yinusun, they fled. Pasuk Chet, Ya'alu harim yerdu bekaot el mekom ze yasat lahem. The ascended mountains, talk about the waters here, they flowed down valleys, and mekom ze yasat lahem, to the place that you have assigned for them. Hashem sends the waters in all kinds of directions, valleys, lakes are formed, rivers are formed, wherever they need to be. So even though you find them in very high places, yes, Hashem has made it so that they should reach such places because there's a need for them. Nonetheless, as we just said before, Gvul Santa Bal Yavorum Bal Yeshurun Lechasot Haaretz. You set a boundary which they may not cross so that they should not return to engulf the earth. So even though Hashem has many ways of getting the water to where it needs to get, He has certain boundaries that He has set. Now let's think for a moment. How does Hashem get water? In all kinds of places. What happens? I'm going to share with you something that you may not have realized, you may not have studied about, read about. It's something so small. Nonetheless, it fits into how Hashem gets water in places perhaps that would have a hard time getting water. And the name of this is a beaver. Have you ever heard of the animal? What do you know about beavers? That they make dams? Is a beaver destructive or is he helpful? The answer is both. If you're talking about the trees, he's destructive. But if you're talking about the ecosystem, the wetlands, the various habitats that he may be creating through the bridges, the dams that he's making, it could be very, very helpful in many, many ways. We don't have the time to go through all the benefits that these dams, these bridges, these structures that he builds create for the water that needs to remain behind. There's a lot of things that go on, a lot of benefits that are derived from the damming of the water. So that's just another small example that people may not think of, that Hashem put this into place. It's only the beaver thinking about it. No other animal. He was given the talent, he was given the skill, and he was given the drive for some reason to do this. Why? It's helpful. Now there's a lot of things, of course, that go on in nature, and maybe just I'll say another word or two about it, then we'll go on. Take an example, a predator. A predator hunts an animal. So by hunting the animal, he will eat. But he won't eat everything. Something will be left over. You know how many worms and bugs and all kinds of little creatures will have a feast when they come and see the leftovers. How many vultures are waiting to clean up? That's the sanitation department, by the way, of Hashem. Vultures. Yeah, to prevent disease. Somebody's got to clean up. And send the hyenas, by the way, for the bones. They love the bones. They'll chew up a bone very, very quickly. Bones! No meat on it. They'll chew it up. Hyenas. You don't want to bury the dead where there's hyenas. They're going to dig them up. Incredible. Look at all these animals, how each one performs a different function, how they all share. In a sense, they don't always like sharing, but each one has a function to play, and each one contributes to this amazing, beautiful world. Who's the one that spoils it? Man. He hunts down the rhinoceros for the horns and removes a species from creation. Becomes extinct. And this interrupts that system that was there in place, that was balanced. Somehow that rhinoceros and other animals did something. And by removing him, by introducing too many wolves and getting rid of all the deer, that's also no good. Taking away all the wolf by killing them because they're hurting your cattle, yeah, but you're going to have a lot of deer. You see what I mean? There's a certain balance that Hashem put into creation. And the same applies to water. There's certain areas of the world that are arid, semi-arid, desert, certain areas that are forested, jungle, and we need the oxygen, by the way, from all that foliage. So we want to take care of that too. And that leads to the next pasuk. Not only is there limitations for where the water can go, where it needs to be, HaMeshalach mayanim b'nechalim b'nharim yahalechun, pasuk Yud. He sends forth springs into streams, they flow between the mountains. So we're talking about springs now. Water is absorbed into the ground, and later on you can have wells. Remember in Iran, they used to use wells to draw the water. In the olden days, in certain countries, that was the only water that they had. They had to dig a well. So some places, have a lot of rain, so there wouldn't be a problem reaching the water. Other places, they need to have somebody bringing in the water carriers. That's what is being described over here. Look, Hashem is providing all of this, streams and all of these wells. For what purpose? So the next few Psukim are beautiful because we see how all of that water and all of the direction of the water, how it serves everyone. Everyone, without exception. So Pasuk Yud Aleph, Yashku kol chayto sadai yishberu feraim tzemam. So when Hashem sends forth all this water in various ways, through the rain, through the spring, through the beaver that I said before, in all kinds of ways that water reaches far away places, who benefits? Yashku kol chayto sadai. They give drink to all the beasts of the field. Yishberu feraim tzemam. The wild animals quench their thirst. Wild animals. Yes, they will always look for the water hole. They need water. The migration occurs as a result of this. Animals will migrate. Birds will migrate because of the climate, because of water, because of all kinds of reasons. So all of this is set up in place from Shamayim. Who else benefits? The next pasuk. Alehem of Hashamayim yishkon miben ofayim yitnu kol. The birds of the heavens dwell beside them. They raise their voice from among the foliage. Ofayim means the greenery, the foliage. They raise their voice. Well, what does that mean, raise their voice? Yeah, obviously they're thankful. They praise Hashem for it. They're happy. I have a little water fountain in my garden, and I can see all the birds coming to drink, coming to bathe. They enjoy it. So of course they're happy. But it's more than that. Yitnu kol, they raise their voice, they chirp, and guess what happens? The animals in the distance say, oh, there must be water there. They can't see. These are faraway places. The birds are there, the birds can get there. So the birds are helping the wild beasts figure out where there's water. Yeah. Monkeys, for example, they know a lot. Follow a monkey, you'll find bananas. You'll find something. Because they know. They've had to search. So you may be able to find, if they let you follow them, you may be able to find a source of water or food. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Mashke harim ma'aliyotav mipri ma'asecha tizba haaretz. He irrigates the mountains from his clouds above. The earth is satiated from the fruit of your works. Okay, so this is talking about rain, how Kadosh Baruch Hu takes care of providing water even in very, very high places where man cannot reach to irrigate the mountains. But he uses here the word ma'aliyotav. He irrigates the mountains from his clouds above. Why call it ma'aliyotav, from the ones above? I mean, that's not really the word for clouds. I think he's telling us that there's more than one source of water when it comes down from above. It's not just clouds. People think it's clouds, but we have dew. And we have water that comes from meteors. The reason why it's called Shamayim, Sham-Maim, over there is water. There is a certain amount of moisture in space. And some of that moisture is carried down here through meteors or meteorites. So it may not be a lot. We don't know how much there is, but we know that there is some, and perhaps one of these days we will be able to figure this out. How much water does come down, how much moisture comes down from above into this world. So perhaps he uses that word, me'aliyotav, to refer to that which is above, not necessarily just cloud cover. But he irrigates the mountains or the high places in all kinds of ways, and as a result of that, from his works, the fruit of your works, everyone is satiated. The land is satiated, and so are the animals. So he goes on to explain how this benefit is distributed. Pasuk Yudalet. מצמיח חציר לבהמה ועשב לעבודת האדם להוציא לחם מן הארץ. He makes grass grow for the cattle and vegetation requiring the labor of man to bring forth food from the earth. So here we have two parts to this pasuk. We have the first one is that the rain enables the animals to eat chatzir. The chatzir will grow. You know chatzir like in Arabic chatzira, which is the various kinds of grass, I guess we can call it. That hay, that's the words I was looking for. Hay and kash v'teven in Hebrew. Straw, yeah. Different kinds of grass. I guess we can call it all grass. Hashem provides that chatzir for the behemah. What for? Not only for these animals to live. Hashem wants his creatures to live, of course, so he has to take care of them. He wants them to be strong enough because they need to help man. Man is going to cultivate that land. Today we have machines, I know, but we still use animals. So if the animals are not going to have food, they're not going to be able to work. So in the olden days, this was extra important. You wanted your camel, your donkey, your horse, your bull, your cows, or whatever, to work, to help. You needed to keep them well fed. So Hashem provides them in order that they should help you. And he provides you with the vegetation that you need, the various grains, the various grasses or vegetation, that you can produce that bread that will satiate you. What else would you get from the ground? So three things are mentioned here. Bread, wine, and oil. So if you look at the next pasuk, V'yayin yesamach levav enosh, it's a famous verse, Le'atzil panim mishamen, v'lechem levav enosh yisad. Wine that gladdens man's heart, oil that makes the face shine, and bread that sustains man's heart. We need bread. Not a chocolate bar, even though chocolate is a good snack sometimes. What's going to really satiate you, sustain you, is bread. It always has been like that. Good bread is very, very healthy. And man should have a certain amount of bread every day, if possible, or every other day. Not to overdo it either. And of course, people will tell you if you're going to have bread, make sure that it's whole wheat. Well, that's a whole different discussion. Yes, we do know certain breads are healthier than others. Still, the rabbis tell us about the importance of having bread for breakfast instead of just something else. Today people have all kinds of alternative breakfasts which are not necessarily healthy. So bread is something that is pointed out as being something that will sustain man's heart, make him feel good, give him the energy that he needs, and clarity, many, many benefits that are listed in the Gemara that bread produces. And then you have the oil that we all need, and the wine. What are we seeing here? Look, Hashem has put certain ingredients into creation, certain food items that are not only beneficial, but they have certain qualities that are very unique to them. Wine, if you don't overdo it, you don't abuse it, it will gladden man's heart, make you happy. Depends, of course, on the type of wine, right? But it does have that quality. That is why throughout history, in all cultures, they valued wine. And in some places they made it at home too, right? The grapes. Yeah. So, look, this is the quality of food that people actually enjoy. Hashem put things into nature that not just will sustain us, that we will enjoy them, and he made it in different colors too. So this is not a black and white world. It's full of many, many beautiful colors and shades to draw us, to attract the birds. For whatever reason, certain things are different colors. So you have a variety of food items that all have different kind of nutrients. And some of them, by the way, could be very, very good as a vitamin. Take, for example, the poppy seed, the poppy that they make tariyak from. Why did Hashem make the poppy from? What's the poppy for? They make opium from it, so that's no good. Yeah, because you can take something and abuse it, just like alcohol. But if it's used properly and intelligently, they use it in medicine today. Various medications contain opiates, right? What is it, codeine or? Vicodin. Which one is that? Vicodin, yeah. Various that I know that they contain a certain amount. Yeah, but it's controlled and it can be helpful. So there's many fruits that we're not yet familiar with, but maybe one day we'll discover that as a result of their of what they contain, they can be very, very healthy for the immune system as a vitamin and the like. So look at all of that and be happy for what Hashem has given you and how He makes this happen through the water that comes down on time. Who else benefits from this? Verse 16. The trees of Hashem, the trees of the Lord, drink their fill, the cedars of Lebanon which He planted. So what do we see here? The tallest trees. If you ever go to Sequoia, or if you ever see the redwoods, tall. You know that the water reaches till the highest spot. You can see leaves. How does the water get there? It is an incredible feat. It is miraculous. It is not something so simple to assume that the water can climb. Water usually doesn't go up, water goes down. So how does the water go up? Something about that tree. But it's not just the tree. It's Hashem who planted them, who created them, and makes it happen that the waters are able to get there. So Yisbe'u, they will drink their fill, what they need. They're going to get, even though they're 250 feet high, they're going to get their fill of water that they need. Now these trees, be careful, don't chop down too many of them. These trees are necessary because that's where the birds build their nests. The stork has her home in the cypress. Yes, different birds, owls, all kinds of birds have a particular spot in a tree that they use as a nest or as a place to hide, as we will see in the next pasuk. There are rocks, caves, places that animals need to be in order for them to hide. So that's the next pasuk. Harim ha'gevohim layelim sela'im achsela shefanim. The high mountains are for the wild goats, the rocks are refuge for the rabbits. You would have to see all kinds of documentaries in order to understand this, how different animals either make themselves a little niche or find themselves a niche that is already made to hide from all kinds of birds that prey on them. And this happens all the time in nature. Now obviously Hashem enables this to happen, that a certain amount, a certain percentage of the birds or the eggs of the birds will be eaten by some of these predators. But some of them will survive. They need to survive because Hashem wants the world to continue. So how will they survive? They either can defend themselves somehow, or they need to find a place where they can hide easily. And they need to do it quickly, because those eagles have very, very good eyesight, and they can see a fish under the water from great distance. And they can grab anything very, very quickly. Before you know it, that's it. It's too late. But Hashem provided the food for all of these animals in order for them to continue to be. Still, He provided them a place that they can conceal themselves. All with the kavanah to sustain this planet. In other words, that the species should not become extinct. This is where we will stop. Just want to finalize over here that we see from every aspect of creation, even from these small details of how animals are able to survive, how they're able to hide and protect themselves, that this is all mechuvan melamala, that this is all directed from above, that they should be able to take care of themselves. That is why they they're either camouflaged, or they're very quick, or they have claws to protect themselves. Everyone has been created with the function that it needs for its survival. And therefore, man should learn from all of this. Look, Hashem took care of them. He provides from the biggest animals to the smallest lice. He provides them with what they need to survive. And you'd be surprised sometimes what they eat, these things. Nonetheless, that's enough for them. And how long do they live? Some of them just for a week or two. That's all. But they've done what they need to do. Man, who's the crown of creation, should realize if Hashem takes care of them, He for sure takes care of me. I just need to learn how to appreciate and make good use of it.